The United States, 4-5% of the world's population, still uses 25% of the world's resources. You outsource production to China, and then you say China is the carbon polluter. That morning in Glasgow, I was in the queue to get a PCR test. There were some oil company executives behind me. One of them saw my press pass. He said, "What are you doing here?" So I told him the story of Mozambique. So I had reported a story in Mozambique about two oil companies. One is a French company, Total. One is the US company, ExxonMobil. They have found the biggest offshore oil field, natural gas field in Mozambique, in Africa actually. And so the people who live just off the field in Cabo Delgado, which is the poorest province in Mozambique, started an uprising in 2017-18. The Mozambican government couldn't crush the uprising. People were frustrated. They said, "We are so poor, we can see this natural gas development, we are getting no benefit." They were upset. The French army was going to intervene, they didn't. The American army was going to didn't. They made a deal, and the army from Rwanda came and crushed the uprising. And I said, "This upsets me. I've come to talk about things like this." And he said to me something that triggered that speech. He said to me, "You're right, but nobody cares. They don't care about those people in Cabo Delgado." And that got me a little annoyed. And I have to tell you honestly, when I went back into the session and they gave me my turn to intervene, inside me was a little bit about that. Okay, if nobody cares, then even I don't care. And I'm going to just say what I believe. I think we are fed up with being told what to do by Washington, D.C., by London, by Paris, world leaders that come from these countries. They claim to be, in a way, better than us. They claim to have all the answers for human rights and all the answers for democracy, and they are the best judges of everything. And I think that attitude is very frustrating for people. Just take a look at this. The United States has the highest per capita incarceration rate in the world. Everybody knows that. It's not a surprise. It's there in all the reports, even in the United States. Why do they keep lecturing everybody else about human rights? The West needs to recognize, well, there's two things they need to recognize. One is the history of colonialism. They have amnesia about this. France, Britain, United States, nobody ever accepts their past. In China, you have the Opium Wars, Anglo-Chinese Wars of the 19th century. The Chinese ships didn't go and start a war in England. When they call it an Anglo-China war, it's wrong. The Chinese were not bombing England. It's a British war imposed on China. You see, it's very interesting to me. They don't even have self-awareness about their own history. This attitude, that we are children, you have to slap us to make us behave. You see, what do we want as people? What's the first thing you want? I want to live in a society where people are not hungry, where people are not illiterate, where people have a place to live, where they have shelter. I want them to have culture. They should have access to education of a higher kind. They should have access to, the internet, electricity, all of that stuff. Today, hundreds of millions of Indians don't have these things. Now, if capitalism can provide them, I would become a capitalist. But capitalism cannot do it. It is not capable of it. Only socialism can lift up everybody above the standard of starvation. We see that actually in the Chinese experiment. And I use the word Chinese experiment a lot because you are experimenting with something. You're trying different things. I appreciate that. because it showed countries like India it can be done in a poor country. So, yeah, I think socialism is necessary in India. Is it easy to make socialism in India? Of course not. Is it easy to make socialism in the United States? Of course not. It's going to be very difficult, but it's worth the struggle. The Indian elites are more interested in an alliance with the United States. This is actually bad for the Indian people because you see, India needs to get involved in the Asian era. The elites, however, feel that the road to freedom comes through Washington, D.C. I think India needs to have a non aligned foreign policy. India should neither ally with, we don't need the camp of US, camp of China. I'm against that. India is a great country, it doesn't have to be in the camp of anybody. And I do encourage the Indian ruling elites to have a more open minded attitude to business, commerce, and human freedom.